Welcome to the first episode of the Relentless Podcast. I'm here with Leon Mann, our guest, and Eddie. So welcome, Leon.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate the invite, man.
So, tell us where it all started, your whole career.
Oh my gosh! This is how long is this podcast? Because you're going for a while. I'll give you the very abbreviated version and try and be as concise as I can. But essentially, I grew up in North London, Haringey Green Lanes. To people familiar with Haringey in North London, went to school at a place called Highgate Wood School in the Haringey Borough. Lots of other notable people went there. Joby McAnuff is another one that went to school at Highgate Woods, and Michael Ledgerwood's another one who went on to play football professionally as well. Then went off to university eventually via City Islington College, and studied geography at Portsmouth University. And before that went to Kenya, spent a bit of time living there, coaching football and teaching English and geography, which was amazing as an 18-year-old to go to like a completely different country and be exposed to I was living in the Great Rift Valley, which is where all the kind of long distance runners come from. So that was incredible. Then my first job out of uni was with a campaign called Kick It Out. So football fans will be very familiar with that. The Kick It Out campaign. The slogan when I joined was "Let's kick racism out of football," because that was the focus, racism. Now it looks at all areas of discrimination, all protected characteristics. So it's grown out massively since when I was there. There was about 4 of us in the office when I was working there. And then I went on to become a BBC sport journalist, which was a bit of a dream of mine, to become a sports journalist covering football. If I wasn't going to become a professional footballer, then my next thing was I really would love to be a sports journalist, but never thought I could be because didn't see many of any people who look like me. The people who look like me in terms of like ethnically, like Garth Crooks, a guy called Damian Johnson, who was a reporter, not many people at all. I can name, the very few people there were. And, Garth had hundreds of games at the top level of football. And I assumed that Damian Johnson was a footballer previously as well. He wasn't. So then after being at the BBC, where I did some really amazing things, so blessed to be there, was a reporter on Football Focus. I presented the boxing coverage for a very, very short time. I was the England reporter again with ITV for a short time. So my broadcasting career was fantastic. I made some films, 2 documentaries for the BBC on Usain Bolt. It was just amazing. And while I was doing those things, I'd set up something called BComs, which stands for the Black Collective of Media in Sport. So that's about trying to get more diverse people from all backgrounds into the sports media, because I kind of felt that it was very middle class, it was very white, it was very male. It wasn't a reflection of the society that we live in, and it certainly wasn't a reflection of the sport that I'd kind of consumed. So began kind of knocking on some doors and making some things happen in terms of a conversation. And then that led to kind of what it is now, where it has 2 amazing people in Andrew and Jack leading BCom's work, like running kind of masterclasses, working with lots of different partners in the sports media, such as BBC, but also like the likes of Nike, News UK, etc. So many different groups, and then of course set up the Football Blacklist, of which you're one of our awardees, our Barclays Community and Grassroots awardee in the most recent celebration and list that we had. And that Football Blacklist was all about just highlighting brilliant role models. So young kids going to school could see, yes, amazing black footballers, yes, of course, and we celebrate them, of course we do. But what about the incredible people working in the community? What about the incredible people who are lawyers, doctors, CEOs, so that the aspirations of a young person becomes much broader? So it's not just football and sport in terms of participating as a player, but it's like working in the community, changing lives, running a football club, being involved in the media, being involved in marketing, like being a lawyer, being a doctor at your football club. It's like there's so many different things to do. And alongside all of that, I set up a production company. So we make films for lots of different clients across the football industry. And I am a consultant, so work as a consultant helping leaders across the game with different challenges that they face around performance, around recruitment, around how we kind of make football a better industry and a better performing industry, most importantly. I think that's about it. I think I've listed my entire CV. So hopefully people haven't fallen asleep or logged off by now. But I've done quite a lot. Yeah,
That's all amazing.
That's crazy. That's a lot.
Yeah, all the work you've done inspires so many other people, and I think obviously your work with ITV and BBC is so amazing. How would you advise people to get into that, whether they've got a disability or ability?
I mean, I think getting into the BBC, I'd gone from at Kick It Out, I'd worked my way up to a fairly senior position where it was only a small organisation, but I kind of felt like I was like pretty senior within a small team. A lot of people, when I walked in at the BBC, were really surprised because I went in right at the bottom because I didn't have any previous experience working in the sports media or in broadcast. So I had to start at the bottom to learn. But I went in right at the bottom. A job called broadcast assistant is the kind of technical term. And it kind of varies where that sits now in the sports media. But at that point in the BBC Sports News, you were like the bottom. And so I was 28 at the time. So I wasn't like young. Well, it's young, but not young. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't 18 or 21 or 22. I was like, getting ready to settle down, to start a family, etc. So it was a bit of a risk, but I knew that if I didn't start it then, it was going to be difficult to do it later on. That's how I felt at that time.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any previous experience working in the sports media or in broadcast. So I had to start at the bottom to learn. But I went in right at the bottom. A job called broadcast assistant is the kind of technical term. And it kind of varies where that sits now in the sports media. But at that point in the BBC Sports News, you were like the bottom. And so I was 28 at the time. So I wasn't like young. Well, it's young, but not young. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I wasn't 18 or 21 or 22. I was like, getting ready to settle down, to start a family, etc. So it was a bit of a risk, but I knew that if I didn't start it then, it was going to be difficult to do it later on. That's how I felt at that time. So I guess you got to get in, right? That's the main thing.
Of course, yeah.
So get in and be a presence of positivity and hard work. Like everyone likes hard work. No, let me rephrase that. Everyone likes hardworking people.
Yeah.
Right. So like that's the basis of everything. I don't care what you're doing. Like work hard and give it everything and be committed. And that should be your foundation, your baseline. Right. The next layer on top of that is have ideas. Like it's an ideas industry. And that might be like a creative idea like me, or I want to go and interview the Tottenham third goalkeeper because he's into art. And I think it'd be amazing for a footballer talking about art, and we don't hear footballers talking about art. And I don't want to do the interview at the training ground. I want to take them to a local gallery in the Tottenham area to go and do that because then we'll get interaction with the local community. And that's not, I want to interview Messi or Ronaldo, right? That's kind of thinking in a practical way, something you could potentially do. Thinking of something that's really interesting and then coming up with an idea, because for a lot of leaders, you're constantly faced with challenges as a leader every single day. So the last thing you want is people just coming, well, here's another challenge. Here's another challenge. You want someone to come with you and say, here's an opportunity, and this is why you should be excited about it. And that might be like a creative idea like me, or I want to go and interview the Tottenham third goalkeeper because he's into art. And I think it'd be amazing for a footballer talking about art, and we don't hear footballers talking about art. And I don't want to do the interview at the training ground. I want to take them to a local gallery in the Tottenham area to go and do that, because then we'll get interaction with the local community. And like, that's not, I want to interview Messi or Ronaldo, right? That's kind of thinking like in a practical way, something you could potentially do. Thinking of something that's really interesting and then coming up with an idea, because for a lot of leaders, like, you're constantly faced with challenges as a leader every single day. So the last thing you want is people just coming, well, here's another challenge. Here's another challenge. You want someone to come with you and say, here's an opportunity, and this is why you should be excited about it. And I would like to be the person who delivers it. Like, that's some energy, that's the positive energy that gets people excited. So I always say to people, particularly young people, have ideas. And a lot of the time, young people don't feel confident enough to do that, because they feel like, well, actually, what if the idea doesn't fit or whatever? That's fine, because that's a learning. Because when you go and approach someone with, like, I've got this idea, and they go, not sure, then say, okay, cool, can I get some feedback on that? Like, why? Why? And they might break down a whole lot of, like, reasons why they don't want to do it, and you might disagree with them, right? And it's like, okay, we've got then an opportunity to challenge it in a kind of thoughtful way. Or you learn something and you go away and you go and, like, get your idea to a much better place, come back to the table at the right time. So for me, it's about hard work, yes. Anyone who sits in this chair will give you that answer, I'd hope. But for me, my kind of tip would be ideas. Think about ideas. Ideas are things that get people excited. And you should be excited by your ideas. And I'm talking creative ideas. It might be there's an idea to, like, create a different set or whatever it is. That's creative in a different way, but maybe a different way to what I'm wired. But, think of ideas. People like ideas.
Yeah, I agree, because there's always sort of got to be a set goal that you work towards as well. And having those creative ideas can lead to that.
Really, I think so. I think that's a great point. Because that's something I'm not great at, is the operational side of things. So I build a plan, but I need someone, like, now, the level I'm working at now, I like to have someone with me who's really, like, they love organising. They love, like, the operational side. Because, as you go along your journey, you kind of recognise the things that you're good at and the things that you might not be so good at. That's the same for everyone. It doesn't matter if you're right at the very top of an organisation or if you're at entry level. You're working on something, or should be working on something, and you should have a self-awareness of, this is where my superpower is. These are the things I need to work on. So if I'm going to be in that position, how do I create plans and systems and processes to enable me to do what I'm good at and to deliver at the same time?
Talking about that as well, obviously, where the Football Blacklist started, we didn't have that Premier League partnership, and now we do. How did you sort of get to that stage, and what did it feel like to sort of get that settled with the Premier League?
Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting, and the story of the Football Blacklist is, not like a straight linear line upwards, right? Like most things, you have little blips and little things that don't go so well. So we started the Football Blacklist at the House of Lords. Yeah, it was the House of Lords. The late Lord Ousley, fantastic guy, who was the chair of Kick It Out at the time, and the director of Kick It Out at the time, Piara Power, they both said, look, you've got this Football Blacklist, which me and Rodney had put together in the Voice newspaper. Why don't you bring these people together? And I was like, yeah, but they ain't going to come. If I invite them, they're not going to come. They don't know who I am or whatever. And like, they definitely would have known who Rodney was. But I wasn't convinced that the people would all come, kind of thing. So, and then, Lord Ousley was like, no, we'll put it in my name, we'll invite them, and they know who he is. So we invited these people, and they came, and it was magical. It's like 50 people at the Houses of Parliament. The first time that they stopped and were, like, talking about being black and their identity, because, on a day-to-day basis, you're walking through corridors, you see people, hello, whatever. You're not exactly talking. You don't exactly stop and talk about things like that in the workplace, although we should, but it's not really something we tend to do, talk about identity in the workplace. We're too busy delivering stuff. So anyway, we kind of had that year one. Year two, we went to Wembley, so the FA were fantastic. Year three, the FA really supported us. We put some big event on at Wembley, singing and dancing. It was brilliant. And then we had some kind of, like, challenges with budgets, etc., the normal stuff. And then after a while, Rodney and I were just like, look, this is all kind of moving too quick. We need to take a pause. So we took a pause and we stopped doing the events. We kept the lists going, but we stopped doing the events. Then I got a call from a guy at the Premier League, Al Bennett, and he was like, why are you not doing that football blacklist anymore? And I was like, well, to be honest, it's complex to deliver these things, and I'm like, my career's going like this now with my journalism. Rodney's really busy, so it's like difficult. And he kind of said, well, look, let's like grab a coffee and have a chat. So we came together and had a chat. And he was like, look, I don't know, like let's see what interests there is, but that felt like a real force for good, and the Premier League would like to support things that are positive. So for me, I was like, yeah, let's continue this conversation. The conversation continued, and then we eventually got to a place where Richard Scudamore, the chief exec of the Premier League, gave the green light to a plan with a guy, Bill Bush, at the Premier League. And that was for an event for 200 people. And I was like, okay, this is amazing, 200 people. This is like... So we went about it. About 350 people turned up to the event because it was just like so popular, the event, even from back then. And we had a great time. The Premier League saw the value in it in terms of like it enabled them as a league to kind of say, like, we really see and respect the black community. Because if you don't know, and many people don't, like 43% of the Premier League's players today are from African and Caribbean communities. Obviously, that's a global picture, but still, it's massive black contribution, right? So it enables them to kind of like recognize that and stand in that. And look, 10 years later from then, we've had 10 celebrations with their support. And we've got bigger and bigger and bigger. The last one, where you were celebrating, of course, we had about 900 people there. Wow. At Arsenal, where we were the year before, we had about 900 people there. So we've kind of reached a level. It gets bigger, of course. Yeah, it's got bigger. And now we have the FA's support as well, have done for like last 4 or 5 years with regional celebrations. So in London, so I know you came to the London event.
To the London one,
that we did in Brixton. So to take it to Brixton was amazing.
It was such an amazing event that day as well.
Well, thank you, because it's the people that make the event. I always say, you can have an amazing venue, you can have great food, you can have great drinks, you can have an amazing music act. But if the people there aren't really feeling the vibe, and if the people there aren't kind of like into what you're talking about, it's going to be a bit flat. So the success of the Football Blacklist is absolutely about the people we're celebrating on stage, number one. But it's also about the people that come and attend and support, because without them, it's just like a fluffy room of stuff. There's plenty of those things that exist.
Of course. I feel like, as I said earlier, you can do anything that you put your mind to. What's your advice that you'd give to specifically disabled people that think that they're not going to really make it, but, they have the support of pretty much anyone to do anything?
Yeah. I mean, look, I have to be careful here because I'm not talking from a place of lived experience. So, I don't live my life with a visible disability, but I'm going to attempt to answer this question as best as I can. Because I do think that, when you have barriers, you can quite understandably shy away, from trying to do things. And in many ways, that's definitely affected black people, women, people from LGBT communities, and absolutely, disabled people. And for me, that means we as a society have to work harder to address those barriers. So, I was at a conference yesterday in Leeds around disability inclusion, and it was looking at the different models, the kind of medical model of being disabled versus the social model of being disabled. And so for people that don't understand, the medical model is like you are medically disabled in some way. So it puts all the emphasis on the individual and person, right? Yeah. And the social way is like saying, well, actually society is disabling people because it's not set up for people who have a disability to live a life where they can do do everything everyone else can. So it's society that needs to be reflecting on what it's doing to make sure that someone who has a disability can use the facilities, is accepted in spaces, is supported in spaces, that if there are provisions needed for someone to do any job, that they are just in place without having to ask, in terms of just saying, this is something that should happen because that is a human being. You're a human being.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I found that really interesting kind of as a learning, and I'm trying to learn more about this space because I realised that in my lived experience, despite having a good friend who is a wheelchair user, there's only so much I kind of know, and I should know more. And I believe society should know more, but we have to do the work, right? So what I would say is absolutely know that, you are going to bring huge value, and you are going to bring huge value partly, largely in many cases, because of who you are, and who you are is partly informed by the hand that you've been dealt, whatever that is. So if you are a disabled person, that is almost like your superpower, because that lived experience separates you from others in terms of knowing and understanding the world in a different way. So those ideas I talked about at the beginning, coming up with ideas, those ideas might be different because of a different lived experience.
Yeah.
So those ideas have value, like real value, because it opens up a spectrum of possibilities that people who don't see the world through that lens and don't experience the world from that lens are unable to contribute with. So please don't ever enter a space thinking, am I meant to be here? Should I be here? Am I just being accepted, etc.? Know that you bring huge value into that space, like huge, huge value. And there's only so much I kind of know, and I should know more. And I believe society should know more, but we have to do the work, right? So what I would say is absolutely know that, you are going to bring huge value, and you are going to bring huge value partly, largely in many cases, because of who you are. There's only so much I kind of know, and I should know more. And I believe society should know more, but we have to do the work, right? So what I would say is absolutely know that, you are going to bring huge value, and you are going to bring huge value partly, largely in many cases, because of who you are, and who you are is partly informed by the hand that you've been dealt, whatever that is. So if you are a disabled person, that is almost like your superpower, because that lived experience separates you from others in terms of knowing and understanding the world in a different way. So those ideas I talked about at the beginning, coming up with ideas, those ideas might be different because of a different lived experience.
Yeah.
So those ideas have value, like real value, because it opens up a spectrum of possibilities that people who don't see the world through that lens and don't experience the world from that lens are unable to contribute with. So please don't ever enter a space thinking, am I meant to be here? Should I be here? Am I just being accepted, etc.? Know that you bring huge value into that space, like huge, huge value. And leaders within your space, as in leaders within any business space, should be articulating that and making that really clear to make sure that people know that when they come into the space, whatever that is, the sports industry, music industry, like economics, whatever it might be, community work, whatever it might be, that you have a huge contribution that you can make, and that will make a big difference to the performance of the entire business, whatever that is.
Crazy sometimes. It is crazy.
It is. The way that, some people are treated differently. I think as the years have gone on, I think that's sort of changed now, and it's started to be more of an inclusive environment now as well.
Things are beginning to change.
Yeah.
It's been changing.
Yeah.
I've noticed it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot of changes have happened.
Yeah. And in what way? How would you say?
Just everyone's accepted for who they are now.
Yeah.
But it should have happened a long time ago.
Yeah. I think it's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey, right? Because there'll probably be someone watching this, no doubt, who will say, well, that's not my experience, because I'm
Everyone
still
has different
not
experiences.
feeling like we are where we should be. I can understand that perspective, but I can also, I'm 46 years old right now, so I've seen a lot in my years that has changed that might not represent real change today to many people. But the only way things change is if we challenge. If people don't challenge, if people weren't brave enough to have challenged things in the past, then the changes that we are talking about, the positive side of things that we're talking about, wouldn't have happened for sure. So we need to continue to challenge. And I think like your generation of younger people are really good at that.
Yeah.
In terms of the way you use platforms like this, for example, to kind of get messages out there to other younger people, all generations of people, really. Back in the day, we didn't have that.
Yeah, no,
we were just having conversations locally. We didn't have a way to amplify our messages. But even if we did, I'm not completely confident we were where we are. Well, we certainly aren't or weren't where we are now back then. So what would our conversations have looked like? What are the things that we would have been talking about and saying?
Yeah.
That would be fascinating to look at. But no, I definitely think things are changing. Some things have changed. But there are still some very prominent voices out there who are influencing people and influencing communities that are preventing change. And that's the other side of this content space, right?
Yeah.
That it amplifies whatever is there, and actually the algorithm will drive things to people based on what they're consuming and looking at. So if they're looking at dangerous messaging, like the science of these apps will just continue to push that out and amplify that, right? So we've got to be conscious of that.
Yeah, I think obviously there is a change and it is happening, and I feel like we want to see more of that, and we want to see more platforms as well kind of make things more together rather than just push it away and kind of be silent about it.
Yeah.
Because not only disabilities, we see a lot of racism in football as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that, to be fair, is happening quite a lot now, especially in crucial games as well that players have.
Yeah, I mean, online has been a big change for everyone to look at, and football, is a space where we see a lot of racism rearing its head, unfortunately, because it tends to attract this kind of tribal following and tribal engagement, where I think some people lose their minds because they are just so focused on the emotions attached to supporting a team, and when those things boil over, it exposes people's ignorance.
Yeah,
It does, definitely.
And that can show up in lots of different ways in terms of what people say.
Yeah.
But when it gets to racism, or ableism, or whatever it might be, that is against the law. So that is not an opinion. That is not a player's rubbish. That is not.
No.
I think this person is a bad person. This is crossing the line in terms of the law. And that's the thing that kind of people need to understand and needs to be policed better. It's down to the apps, those big companies, those big social media companies that are often based outside of the UK, as we know, with different laws, etc., that makes it difficult to prosecute and control the abuse. But the fact that it's a loud conversation in the corridors of power across sport, football, I think is a good thing, because it just means that those leaders kind of are certainly aware of the problems and aware of the significance of the problems. I won't name them, but there was an incident of racism online this season just passed, and the CEO of a club called me and just kind of said, look, I'm just fed up because are the campaigns working? We've seen so many campaigns. Like what we doing here? Because I can't have my players being racially abused, and this particular CEO was incredibly upset by it all and just wanted to get to the point of like, how do we actually stop this? And the answer is complex, and the answer is that no one has the answer just yet. So we have to work collectively to be able to stop these things. But once upon a time, the leaders weren't saying anything about any issues of racism on the pitch or online or anything. And now it feels like there's an awareness that's growing, and there are some prominent people in leadership positions that genuinely are caring, because they're good humans and they kind of want to get some changes made. But nobody has the answer at the moment.
No one does, because it is really difficult to tackle as well. In this day and age, it's really difficult because sometimes it's hard to identify who it is. Yeah,
you won't know.
Yeah,
Because it's behind the screen.
That's frustrating, right?
It is annoying, of course it is.
It's completely frustrating because, when it comes to like piracy in football, if you're streaming something illegally, it gets pulled down pretty quickly, right? So, but the good news with those things is that, and I was talking about this in a meeting, is the learnings from that are now being applied to things like racist abuse, whatever the abuse might be. And what we need is, the same energy and the same resource and budget applied to it, because that will certainly help us on the way to making more progress.
Definitely. It's a thing that there are more things that are helping to tackle racism, but I think it's just how it happens is definitely a thing that needs to be finalised a bit more, because you see these comments and see these investigations that happen, and it's just really hard to take them down, and they go on for quite a long time.
It goes on for a very long time.
Yeah, no, it does, and we need to just ensure that absolutely everything that we can do is being done. And I know, because I'm sat around the table with lots of very clever people with lived experience, who are committed to trying to address these things, that they are exploring all the different options that they can. We continue. That's the work as someone who's engaged in this work, either as a campaigner, as a senior administrator, as a participant in the sport, as someone who's working in the sport. You've got to keep going. Yeah. And it can be incredibly difficult, man.
It is.
But, what's the other option? You kind of accept it.
No, you're not going to accept it. Of course you're not going to accept it. No.
So, we might need mental breaks, but we continue pushing forward, and not just pushing forward with the same things, the same conversations. If those things aren't working, let's not follow a path of madness where we keep doing the same thing and wondering why it's not working.
Yeah, it needs to change.
You need to look at different ways and change your approach to these things. That includes some big brains getting involved in addressing these problems and looking at who the people are around the tables. Are they the right people? Are they offering that different perspective? Are they offering that different expertise in terms of helping us to get to a better place?
Definitely. I think one thing that I want to talk about, which is obviously on the more positive side, is obviously your links with the FA, and recently you were at the Man City and Brighton game for the Adobe Women's FA Cup. How do you sort of get to that sort of stage, and what was that all like?
Do you know what? It was really nice to be there for many reasons. One of which was it was the Arsenal parade day, and I just was like,
didn't want to go to that.
I just need something to distract me.
Yourself.
So very fortunately, and I didn't even clock it at the time, but I got an invite to the Women's FA Cup final by the chief executive, who I kind of have lots of really good conversations with. Someone who I believe is committed to positive change, who show me through their actions that they are kind of willing to be open to different ideas, try things. I think they share a frustration around the lack of progress around things like the representation in senior leadership roles across the game, etc. So I've got a good relationship with Mark Bullingham, and it was Mark who invited me along. And very kindly, there was an opportunity to bring my daughter as well. My eldest daughter is a football fan. Mm-hmm. So you just get an invite and you think, wow, it's amazing. Royal Box. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's not the first time I've been. I was at the men's FA Cup final in the Royal Box as well, and I've been a few times in England games and stuff. But every time it's a massive privilege and honour. I didn't grow up in a way that I was ever in hospitality, let alone the Royal Box, right? So it's always like a big deal. So we sat down having food and stuff, and you go and get your tickets. You pick up your pass, which has got your ticket number, and across the I was going back to call it canteen. It's not canteen. Hospitality space where all the food is and what's not. So I went over there with my daughter, grabbed the thing, came back, didn't even look at it, and then she goes, "Oh, it's row 1." I was like, "What?" And I looked and I was like, "Oh, row 1. This is great." And I'd sat with Mark before, and as a CEO, obviously he is on row 1, but for England games, the players don't come up and collect a medal or anything, do they? So then I got down to the seat, and I was like, "Oh." So they can walk round, and we all see the famous shots.
Start realising it,
when you go up and you get your medal and you lift the cup in that space, and I just clocked. I was like, "Oh wow!" And we were to the side, so we're not in the middle, where the kind of like the dignitaries would be sat with, to the side. And I was thinking, "Oh well, it's going to be great because my daughter's going to get to see the players walk off." Yeah. Anyway, then the teams start coming. The officials come up and they walked along and they shook everyone's hand, and it came to me, and I was like, "Oh, all right, okay." And put my hand out, and told my daughter, "Put your hand out," and then she put her hand out. Next thing you know, we're shaking hands with all the players. So that was a bit nuts, man. Because I've grown up on TV watching all the FA Cup finals. I am a fan of women's football. And my daughter is a fan of women's football and men's football, same as me. So she was delighted to kind of, she's chill, man. She's a very chill child. But she did enjoy putting her hand out as I was telling her to, and shaking the players' hands and stuff. So that was pretty cool. But in terms of how you get there, it's ideas, right?
Hard work and ideas,
I go back to it. Like, you get there because you're bringing something to the table that has value. Yeah. Right? And I'm often in meetings and people say to me, "So Leon, what do you think, what's your take on what young people are thinking about this?" And I always find it a really interesting question because, as I've kind of exclusively revealed, I'm 46 years old, right? So I'm kind of not exactly young anymore, right?
I mean, out, don't worry.
Well, I listen to my kids, and I feel like through the things I've set up, like BComs and Blacklists, it does give me interaction with younger people. So I kind of do a lot of mentoring and stuff like that. So within that space, I'm getting asked questions, but I'm also kind of listening with curiosity to the answers that I'm asking questions about, in terms of where they're engaging with the world, how they're engaging, what's the next thing they see coming. Just that curiosity about knowing more about the world we live in, and the different lens that I talked about in terms of, a disabled person's lens will be different to my lens potentially. So how do I learn from that? I can never have that lived experience, but I can learn and find a way to kind of tune into opportunities or challenges or things we need to fix or whatever it might be. So it's ideas. I've just always been this problem's annoying me, but what's the way we go about fixing it? Scribbling a little idea down. And trust me, some of them ideas were not very good and rubbish and didn't work. Some of them never got off a piece of paper and were probably my best ideas, but no one believed in them. But I never gave up. I didn't go, boom. I see some folks, they go, "I've got this idea, it's amazing, it's going to change the world, da-da-da-da-da." They put it forward and someone goes, "Nah, you're all right." And then they go, "All right, then," and then bin it. Yeah. And then they fall into this place of being, no one's going to listen to me anyway.
The other one's not going to work.
Yeah. And they don't come up with any more ideas. Yeah. And I'm like, no. This is just the process. This is just like when you start playing football, you kick a football and it's not exactly going to fly into the back of the net, right? You have to keep kicking it, and learning, shaping your technique, changing your technique. I'm a bit older now, so my technique's got to change because I'm not a young guy. So I see ideas in the same way. How are we kind of creating almost this kind of muscle in our brains, where we're thinking about the ideas that we're coming up with and we're kind of challenging ourselves, and also being open to feedback where someone goes, "Man, that's a rubbish idea." And then you go, no, it's not. Or you go, yeah, do you know what? Actually, it's a bit rubbish, but it's only rubbish because of this. And if I just change that a little bit, move that a little bit, then actually this could be a really good idea. And, you know, I just think that whole process, people have got to embrace it a little bit more. It's certainly the reason why I'm sat on row 1 at an FA Cup final.
Yeah, it's all about dedicating yourself as well and just making sure that, you know, you're not giving up and you'll just keep on going.
Yeah, I think so. Like, resilience is a huge thing, right? And I think, you know, people who come from like backgrounds where they're from a protected characteristic, be it from a really working class background, you know, be it like, you know, having a disability, being it like coming from a minority group, like you build this resilience because the world kind of pushes you back and you kind of have to keep coming forward, right? So it's a bit like when you're doing reps in the gym. Like, you don't get stronger by just looking at the weights.
At the machine here.
Right? It's like, I wish I could. Because
yeah, that'd be amazing.
I was in the gym this morning.
Yeah.
But it's that same reflex when you're going through life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, some people break because it's just too much.
Mm-hmm.
The challenges are too much. Other people find kind of a lane to be in, and that lane has a pace that they're just really happy with. So it's not about being a CEO for them. Like, it's and that's fine, right? That shouldn't determine what a successful life is or isn't, because you can give everything to wanting to be a CEO or a leader of a business and never see your children, right? So who's the winner? The person who's seeing their children, having a loving relationship with their children, or the person who's earning £1 million a year as a CEO but has no relationship with their children because they're never around?
Mm-hmm.
So, like, we all have different journeys and different lanes to be in, different paces to go at different times. But the thing I would hate is for anyone to kind of feel like, well, I can't do that because of these things, so I'm not going to try.
Yeah.
Like, and I understand why people feel like that, but I would encourage anyone watching this who kind of feels in a bit of a state of frustration, feels like things aren't going to ever happen for them, feels like, oh, well, it's all right for you to say that, yada, yada, yada. Well, actually, like, you know, it's okay to like chill for a bit, but just don't make it your story.
No.
Don't be the guy who sits in the pub and goes, I could have played for AC Milan or Juventus or Barcelona, but just the trial didn't go very well at Leyton Orient and I got a big injury. And like, you know, it's like, you know, you need to come back to the table, right? You need to like
just keep going.
And, you know, and that's not always, it's not always easy because you do have people around you sometimes in your life who are just like, you're never going to do that. So why would you bother? Like, you know, just get the job in Tesco's and that's you. Right,
of course not.
And actually, it's fine to have a job in Tesco's. Like,
I worked in
Sainsbury's, Tesco's. They're all getting some free advertising today. But like, it's fine. Like those, that's real life, right? So I never knock that.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to present that as, oh, well, that's the bottom of the bottom, right? Because actually, you're getting your money, you're feeding your family, etc., etc. But like the idea that someone just feels like that is their future and will only be their future. You know, unless they want it to be, unless they're just saying, well, I'm going to work in Tesco, I'm going to be the best person in Tesco, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, that's me. That's a beautiful thing, right?
Yeah,
what's not a beautiful thing is, well, I'll probably just work in Tesco's for the rest of my life, you know. But why? Well, because nothing's ever going to happen for me ever, so that's just me. It's like, well, no, I don't want people to feel that way. I want people to feel like they can explore things and push and achieve.
Yeah, I feel like that can sometimes be a mental block for some people, just feeling like they're stuck in one position or one job, and that can sometimes be influenced on what other people say.
Yeah, and you know, I've kind of felt those emotions in my life for sure on my own journey, right? So someone might look at me and go, you're a successful person. They might look at me and go, I'm a successful person. But what I would like them to know is that if I am seen as a successful person, it's because I've navigated some really difficult situations along the way.
Yeah.
It's because I didn't walk away.
Yeah.
It's because maybe I did take a pause. It's because I went away and I didn't believe the feedback that I had from someone because they wanted to position me in a particular place and I didn't believe it. So I just kept going and found a different way. and that idea that didn't work and everyone laughed at. Okay, well, that became the motivation to make the idea better next time and be more prepared next time. And, you know, so it's like, this is the journey. It's like that.
Journey.
It's a bumpy journey.
Always
and sometimes you feel like you might be falling off.
But it just goes back up.
But you just got to keep going, man. And if you can, and this is where I feel really blessed, because I've dealt with a lot of stress in my life. But I've had so much joy in my life. I really have. I feel so lucky. Talking about being in an FA Cup final, row 1, that's nuts. I never would have written that down.
No, of course
something
not.
I would have ever have got to. But actually, it happening, I kind of almost forgot it until you mentioned it to me, right? So I'm thinking
ahead,
beyond, right? I'm like, well, what's
next?
What's the next thing? What's the next big thing? And that's exciting, and life's to be excited about.
I think it's all about giving yourself time as well, just to kind of think about what you're doing next and not trying to rush everything, and then it all gets muddled up, and then you just don't know what to do.
Lost in the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's, you know, I mean, I don't know, in your coaching world, I don't know what you encounter in terms of the people that you're coaching. I'm sure it'll be.
I'm one of them.
Right. Okay.
I'm one of them.
So what's Jude like then? You know.
Jude's he's amazing. He's inspired me to carry on, because I was going to stop playing football and become a coach like Jude, but I was like, I can do both.
Yes.
So I have helped him when he needs it, but him as a coach, he inspires the people that just come in and like, I'm interested in football. I want to get better. He's obviously taught a few of our boys to get better as a person and as a coach and as a player. So, but Jude's amazing when it comes to coaching.
Great.
He gives me a lot of advice and a lot of tips. I'll give it to him.
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And what do you see in Eddie in terms of what his journey has been?
I think he's had such a good journey. I think obviously wanting to stop playing football, and then obviously to try and get that motivation back. And he's been just so amazing for us, so dedicated. He's always working hard to try and fit himself into a coaching role, because he always tries to inspire others and just tell them to keep going. You know, even if we're losing a game or whatever, he always get everyone together and just try and motivate them. And that's what I love about working with Eddie. And I think he's kind of made me a better coach myself, because obviously me winning the awards I have is mainly because of him as well.
Wow.
I tried my best.
Well, I'm learning about you guys now. This is great. And it sits in the same space of hopefully what I'm saying. You know, like, no journey is easy.
No,
it's not.
Journey's never going to be easy.
No. And, you know, I feel fortunate I've had support from lots of different people. There will be people who don't feel that they have support. There'll be people who feel they can't ask for help, particularly men. Like, you know, we're not good at saying, this is a bit rough, man. Like, can you help me out? We're not good at that. We kind of tend to just disappear and be in the corner quietly, kind of trying to solve our own kind of issues. And sometimes they're so complex you can't by yourself.
Yeah, and then those emotions kind of build up, and then it goes further, and then obviously we don't want that. Yeah,
and you can end up in all sorts of places. Some people end up in very, very dark places. So, you know, we need to support each other more as men. And change the culture. That's something I'm really kind of passionate about, because it's easy to say things in situations like this, but, you know, how do we really show up for other people? How do we recognise things aren't going so well for other people? How do we recognise things aren't going well for us, ourselves, you know? And we can feel the burden of expectation sometimes, in terms of people expect this from you, expect you to do these things. And sometimes we wake up and we just don't have the energy that day or that week or that month.
It happens. Yeah, of course.
Like, you know, but how do we push through that in a healthy way that doesn't just burn us out? So those are some of the things I'm kind of thinking a lot more about at the moment, because kind of, you know, after 20 years of really grafting, you start to feel it a little bit, you know, in your body and your mind.
Yeah.
So you've got to be careful that you don't kind of push on in the hope that you're doing something that's really good, but actually you're not really serving in the way that you should.
Yeah, I think one thing as well, it's all about keeping positive and try not to let those negative thoughts get to you. Although they might try get to you, just try not to, because it's a good thing when you're always positive and you're always thinking ahead. Even if things are going bad, it doesn't really matter. Just keep on pushing yourself, as you said earlier.
Yeah, I've definitely experienced that. I've definitely been in a place where it's been like, you know, like, I don't know, probably there's some book that I should be referring to now, but I can't think of it. But, you know, you've got two voices in your head.
Always
like,
two voices in your head,
you know,
of course.
And that negative voice kind of can, you know, create some things that are not real for you in your head, and can create scenarios and feelings and thoughts about things that aren't real, that haven't happened. We don't need to think about worst case scenario all the time. It's a natural instinct as a human to go, oh, but this might happen, and it's like we're protecting ourselves, right?
Yeah.
So we're not going to naively just kind of like walk on the edge of a cliff. Like, you know, there's something in you to go, oh, no, let me kind of
step back, think.
But we also should have a healthy balance in terms of the forces around us and what we're listening to. Like when I find myself in a negative spiral, you know, I sometimes, you know, have to just change my environment. So it might be I'm sat at my desk and like I'm seeing all sorts of madness kind of popping up in my inbox and whatever and social media. And I'm just like, do you know what? I'm going down. You know, I live in Walthamstow, so I'm just going to walk down the market. Just going to walk down to the bottom of the market or up to the village and
just get some fresh air.
Get some fresh air, get some space. Stop looking at social media. Stop looking at email. Stop looking at the phone, and just kind of like physically change my environment so that I can kind of then come back with some more energy, a different kind of like headspace to attack the problems that are present. Like I think we probably, as a society, could do a better job at that. In terms of
this generation
helping each other.
Couldn't do that. Just take 5 minutes off their phone and just go take a walk down the road.
Just
everyone's
something
glued
nice
to
and
it.
peaceful.
Yeah. I think there needs to be guidance around this. This week I did a live conversation with the footballer Mikel Antonio, and he talks about wanting to start a therapy revolution. He believes that young people as young as 10, when they're just about to think about going into secondary school, have got like, you know, some kind of therapy, and then again at 16, then at 18 when they're thinking about going into work.
And then 21 ways.
Just kind of checks. So you're not waiting for anyone to get ill or unwell or have poor mental health, but you're getting ahead of it. So, you know, in the same way that, you know, we might go for a run, or we might pick up a weight, or we might go rowing, or we might, whatever it is, we do something physical to kind of help us like kind of look after and maintain our bodies. You know, it might be that we're doing something, that we're applying that same principle of looking after ourselves, but with the help and aid of someone else, we're looking after our minds, you know, in terms of that therapy. I think that's something we need to think about a lot more.
It's really important, I think.
What's it like being a sports journalist yourself? As you said,
it's funny because I don't kind of see myself as a sports journalist anymore, but I certainly have for a long time. And it's funny because I am the vice chair currently of the Sports Journalists Association. So it sounds a bit funny saying I'm not a sports journalist.
Yeah.
But I think the whole kind of makeup of what it is to be a sports journalist has changed now anyway. It's a lot more freelance. It's a lot more kind of different roles. So I might be involved in being an executive director, producer on a film that we're making, a short film or whatever, or content series. You know, I might still write a column. I might still do some kind of live conversation. So it's still journalism to some extent. But in terms of being a journalist, when I was full-time at the BBC, being a journalist and at ITV as a freelancer, it's amazing. But it still comes with a lot of pressure and stress, right? Because like you're the person with the microphone broadcasting to 16 million people,
a lot of people,
with the questions that you're asking the person. And if you've not asked the question about the missed penalty that happened during the game because you didn't see it as being that important, and they're going back to the studio and they're talking just about the missed penalty, like someone's not going to get a nice phone call to say, well, what's gone on there? You're not realised.
That's the key important part.
You know, you're dealing with a lot of emotion. You're in a very competitive industry. So while there's lots of amazing people who are very nice, Not everyone's always that nice. So yeah, it's an incredible industry. I would encourage anyone with any thoughts of going into it to give it a go. And it took me all around the world. It genuinely took me all around the world. When I was doing the boxing, I'd be in Kazakhstan, I'd be in all sorts of places, right, that I never would normally go to, because they're not like holiday destinations in my world.
No, of course not.
But I'm experiencing like Belarus, I'm going to all these different places, parts of China that are not kind of Beijing or Shanghai.
Yeah.
So I've experienced so many different beautiful, incredible, amazing parts of the world because of sport, because it's taken me there with a microphone to ask someone some questions and observe some sporting. So it's an amazing, amazing career. I would encourage people, if they are interested, to at least explore it.
Okay. Thank you, Leon. Honestly, so inspirational.
And you guys as well. Thank you. Thank you for the invite on. I really appreciate it.
So check out Leon's website in the description below, and watch out for next week when we have Chelsea's amputee Sofiane Falali on. It's going to be a great show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.